What's up? This is the Academic Weapons Podcast, and we're going to be talking about family communication patterns and also other things, I guess. I'm here with Shay, Daniel, Soleil, and Lucy. They'll be doing their sections of this thing with the stuff.
Cyrus.
Also, I'm Cyrus.
The family communication patterns theory is based on two dimensions: conversation orientation, the comfortability and frequency of open talk, and comfortability orientation, the shared importance of beliefs and values. The four types are structured on a graph. Pluralistic, high in conversation orientation, low in comfortability orientation. This usually means the pressure to conform to beliefs and values isn't as strong in the family, allowing conversation to flow more freely because of the idea of unacceptable topics is less likely. Consensual, high in both conversation and comfortability orientations. This means the family is strong in beliefs and values they want their children to pass on, but this is still high in conversation comfortability. Meaning the parents still want to hear what their children have to say, even if it's against their beliefs. Protective families are low conversation orientation and high comfort orientation. They believe their children should share their beliefs and values and don't keep an open conversation for pushback. They can also be very invasive and constantly monitor their children, even into adulthood. Laissez-faire. Low in comfortability orientation and conversation orientation. This family is hands-off, so to speak. No one really talks to each other, and there's little to no emphasis on family values or beliefs. These different parenting matters are important to discuss because of the lasting effects they have on children, their lives, their goals, and even the families they create later if they choose to.
In terms of who started the theory of family communication patterns, Jack McLeod and Stephen Chaffee created this theory, who were two communication professors and researchers at the University of Wisconsin-Madison and the University of California, Santa Barbara. McLeod specialized in political socialization and how family dynamics affect young people's political beliefs, as well as public participation, mass communication effects, and the social impact of media. Chaffee is known for helping define media effects theory, as well as pioneering communication research methods. These two co-developed FCPT, which explained how communication styles in families affect how children learn to think and form their own opinions. Some years later, Mary Ann Fitzpatrick and Askin Corner expounded on this theory. Fitzpatrick was a professor at the University of South Carolina and focused her research on marital and family relations and communication. Her work is well known as she is renowned for bridging interpersonal communication and family psychology. Corner was a professor at the University of Minnesota, and he focused on family functioning, parent-child relations, and coping with stress in his research. His work has been recognized for showing how family talk patterns influence emotional health and development.
With all that said, you may be asking, why? Well, the family communication pattern theory was developed to understand the way families communicate and how it influences the beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors of people within them. Researchers wanted to answer the question like, how do everyday conversations between parents and children shape the way we see the world? Why do some families encourage open discussion and independence while others focus on more agreement and obedience? The theory tries to explain and predict how these different communication styles affect human behavior. Things like confidence, decision-making, conflict resolution, and how people form relationships later on in life. It looks at how family talks kind of creates this so-called shared social reality, which basically means how families help each other and kind of decide what's normal. What's right is how to interpret information from the outside world. The main issue in this theory is trying to address is that not all families communicate the same way, and those differences have long-term effects. Earlier, researchers often treated all families as if they worked the same. But this theory showed that variations in family communication actually shape people's personalities, mental health, and social development. Honestly, I feel that. To finish this off, family communication pattern theory was developed to understand, explain, and predict how the way families talk with each other influences how we become and how we connect with others throughout our lives.
The family communications theory was developed right here in the U.S., and the roots of the theory go all the way back to the 1960s when the two scholars that were previously talked about, McLeod and Stephen Chafee, started asking some questions about how families talk about politics and media. And their early research didn't start in a lab or a regular like American household. It actually began in Quito, Ecuador, where McLeod studied how families process like political news, and from there they expanded their studies to like include families in the U.S. and other countries. And the main focus was on how parent-child conversations about things like TV debates and campaign ads influence how like kids understood the world around them. And these conversations revealed something big, that families tend to communicate in two main ways. Conversation orientation, where open discussion is encouraged, and conformity orientation, where parents emphasize obedience and shared values. Now, if we fast forward a little bit, that's when Askin Coroner and Mary Ann Fitzpatrick came into the picture. And both of those were based at American universities, and they took the original idea and kind of expanded it into what it is today, shifting the focus from just media and politics to the everyday ways families create a shared reality, whether it's about school, religion, money, or just what's just for dinner. So when did the theory actually develop? The earliest foundations were laid in the 1960s, and with those first studies obviously by McLeod and Chafee, but it really began to gain traction and evolve through the 1970s and 80s. But then again, in the 2000s, as Coroner and Fitzpatrick conducted more in-depth research on family dynamics. And over the past 50 years, the FCP theory has grown into a well-established framework in the world of communication studies. And today, it's widely used in everything from academic research to practice tools for parenting, education, and mental health. And while it's an older theory, it's not outdated. In fact, recent studies have added new layers into the theory, distinguishing things between cold versus warm conformity, and exploring how these communication patterns influence not just our childhood, but our relationships, careers, and even our political engagement as adults. So to kind of summarize it all, it's basically just it has a humongous modern impact in helping us understand how the ways our family talk or don't talk set the stage for how we engage with the world as a whole.
So you must be wondering, what's the practical application of this theory in research? I would sure wonder that too. So when people use this theory in research, they generally use surveys to gauge what type of family communication pattern people grew up with, and they usually have questions about what they're researching, usually along the lines of how they're communicating with people outside the family groups. So they will understand both what the family communication theory is, as well the pattern generally is, as well as what the person's type of conversation with other people are as well. An example about how this has been used in research is with first-year college students and how likely their parents are to invade their adult children's privacy once they are away from home. The specific questions they asked were regarding their parents snooping on emails, stalking their socials, and asking personal questions. They found that it's often protective type families that will invade privacy in this way, but also sometimes consensual family types. Generally, family types with a higher conformity score, I guess. But also another thing that they found was that consensual family types, when they invade the privacy of their children have much more difficulty calling out the harmful behavior of their parents. Another example of how it's used in research is in the workplace and sometimes in political engagement. So in the workplace, a lot of in the workplace also, if there's a disagreement with bosses or supervisors in low conformity families, they will likely voice a complaint to their bosses, but high conformity families tend to keep their concerns to themselves. This can be important to know because sometimes if you're in the workplace and there is an issue that affects a lot of people, you want to be able to voice that complaint. Also, in political engagement, a higher conversational score, showed that more people were likely to and comfortable with seeking political information, sharing that information, feeling like they were able to engage in the political process and participate in it. Children from laissez-faire families were so much less likely to do things like this. And yeah, awesome, great. In this podcast, that is a podcast, we have looked a lot at the textbook, A First Look at Communication Theory by E.M. Griffin, Andrew Libet, and other people for sure, as well as the article, Family Communication Patterns Theory, A Social Cognitive Approach, edited by Askin F. Corner and Mary Ann Fitzpatrick, and edited by other people for sure. Anyways, communication theory in families, crazy stuff. Love that.
Yep.
Say goodbye, Soleil.
Goodbye.
Daniel.
Goodbye.
Arrivederci.
Arrivederci.
Goodbye.
Awesome. Look, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to work. Awesome.
1, 2, 3.
Academic Weapons, sign off.